Welcome to another great MBA Spotlight. My name is Brendan Kelly. I am one of the GMAT Club moderators, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Debbie Hertzing, and she is an Assistant Director of Admissions for the Mendoza School at the University of Notre Dame. And without any further ado, I will go ahead and pass off the mic to her and let her talk about the program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brendan. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. As Brendan mentioned, I am calling from the University of Notre Dame, representing the MBA programs at the university. Next, please. So just some things that we're going to go over during this session. We're going to start off with the MBA program options, go through the application process, a few tips for you as you're going through the process. I'll just show you when our next application deadlines are, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Next. So we first have our one-year accelerated MBA program, where the prerequisites are financial accounting and statistics. This is really for people that already have a business background in the area that they want to remain in after getting their MBA. So as an example, you might be in the finance area or have a finance position, but now you want to be able to manage that team or move up a little bit further. The 1 year could work for you as it does not have the internship. Then we also have the 2-year traditional MBA program where there is the internship in between those two. And this is for everybody else. So all career changers, people that aren't even in business, all of that. So we have military folks that are in this program as well. And then we also have the dual degree MBA, MSBA, which is also part of the 2-year program, but you do gain those 2 degrees in 2 years. And then we also have some other dual degree options. Many of those are for people that are already at Notre Dame. So if you're interested in any of those, but one is the JD MBA. So any of you that may be looking to get your JD at Notre Dame and also want to get your MBA, we can talk about that offline as well. Next, please. So looking at our concentrations, we do have the business analytics, business leadership, corporate finance, entrepreneurship and innovation, investments, marketing, strategy, and supply chain and operations management. And many of our students do take on 2 concentrations. So as you're looking at the combinations of different things that you could have, that is an option for our students. The other part of that is that there are many elective courses. So some of those elective courses would take on the requirements for that second concentration, but then you'd also have some electives open up to kind of customize the balance of your program. So let's say you want to do business analytics and business leadership as an example, but you also feel that marketing, some marketing courses would be beneficial to you. You're able to kind of design that part of your program to meet the needs for yourself. So we do have some other parts of the program that is both for the 1 year, 2 year, and the dual degree, where we start everyone off with the Integral Leadership Development Program. So this is actually part of the orientation, and it's a 4-day deep dive into yourself and with your core team members. So into yourself, more to find out the type of leader that you want to be. What types of leadership do you want to emulate? And it's really a time for you to really be honest with yourself in the sense that you want to kind of check yourself at the door, I guess, where you want to see where the things are that you can improve on. Where are things that you really should rely on others for, that sort of thing. And then you also meet up with your core team members, where all of our core classes, you are with that same team. So you also get to know about each other, how they all work, what their strengths are, all of that. And so you kind of have some of that planning done before you even start your courses together. And then another course that's popular is our Applied Investment Management for those finance folks, where you also, or we actually have a part of our university's endowment, and you are making those investment choices. So a lot of the finance folks are really interested in that. And then one of our really popular courses for this is for everyone is called the Business on the Frontlines course. And in this course is where our candidates will work with partners in a variety of different countries where they've been war torn, they're impoverished, or potentially have had a natural disaster, and they're trying to rebuild just living, or they're rebuilding their economy. And so trying to find solutions for them. And so in the past, we've had this in international countries, but for the first time this year, we're also bringing this to the United States, and we just plan on continue growing this course so that more and more of our students can take part in this. But this is such a great opportunity to use all of those business skills that you're learning and then apply them into a real world experience. And it's a 2 module course. We are on 4 mods each year, so there's 7-week courses. So this particular course, along with Applied Investment Management, is 2 mods each. Then we also have the interterm intensive courses. These are a week long, about 4 days in between each module in the fall semester and the spring semester. And so these, again, are going to be where you get that real world experience. And it could be in your particular area. So if you're marketing concentrate, for an example, you could be working on a marketing plan with a company. Sometimes our students will travel there. Obviously this year things are a little bit different, but or the company will travel to campus and they'll provide a real world experience that our students will try to find solutions for them on. And then typically we do also have the international immersion. We will go to Chile for 7 weeks in the fall, and then in the spring we do have in between the 2 modules, so interterm week and spring break, where they have the opportunity to travel as well. And that's also the travel time for the Business on the Front Lines, where you go to the country or the location that you're going to be working with. And then for anyone that's interested in entrepreneurship, we do have the Idea Center and Innovation Park. So the Idea Center is exactly what it sounds like. You're sharing ideas with people that have started businesses, want to start businesses. What has worked for those that have started businesses? What tips can they give you? And just helping each other build each other's businesses up. Innovation Park is actually a small business incubator. And so you can, even as a student, start your business while you are at Notre Dame. Next. So this is actually the first part of the application. And so you will see where you will check which program that you're interested in. And for those that may not be sure which program specifically they want to apply to, you do need to choose your primary program, whether it's the 1 year or the 2 year. So looking at what the prerequisites are for the 1 year. And then if you think that you may not qualify for the 1 year, certainly you can have those conversations with us ahead of time, or you can go ahead and apply for the 1 year. But then once you check that, it'll say, do you also want to be considered for the 2 year? So just so you know, you wouldn't be admitted to both of those. We would actually admit you or let you know that maybe you'd be a better option for the 2 year program. So we can always have one-on-one conversations with that as well. Next. So some of our application requirements are that we do have 1 essay, your statement of purpose. We do have a 4-slide PowerPoint presentation, your resume, 2 recommendations, your academic transcripts, and your official GMAT GRE scores. And for international students, we also have your language score report for that. So for the scores, I do want to mention, like with GMAT, they do give the unofficial scores, and you can go ahead and submit those to us to get your application moving through the process. Same with your transcripts. We do get that question asked a lot. We can take unofficial transcripts, and then you can provide your official transcripts later. Next. So for the essay and your statement of purpose, here is what our current essay questions are. And so I guess a tip for you would be to be sure that you answer the question I would also say have other people read it and check for grammatical errors. As you know, spell check doesn't pick up on all of those there, and there's. I always use that as an example to make sure that's the proper one that you're using. And then also I find that reading it out loud to yourself, you can actually hear what your essay is sounding like, and is that exactly how you want it. So some of those tips, just use those as you're preparing. The other thing I would say is if you're applying to multiple schools, I know sometimes those days for each school and maybe tweak it, but be sure that you are putting in the correct name of the school. And so if you are using another school name, make sure you repurpose it to University of Notre Dame as an example. And so the statement of purpose is just going to be something short that you are going to put as to how you want to use the MBA after you graduate, and so and why you want to use the MBA, or why you want to get the MBA. All right, next. So the 4-slide PowerPoint presentation that we have you upload, it's in a PDF, and really what we want to do with this is you really want to show us more about you as a person outside of your resume, your work experience. We want to get to know you, what your hobbies are, your family life, all those kinds of things. So you can put whatever you want. It is a blank slate on purpose because we really, as I mentioned, we really want to get to know more about you as a person and the things that you really enjoy doing outside of work. And then for your resume, we do want to, you all want to make sure that it is current and that it is one page. And so I know this seems difficult, for people that might have been in the workforce a longer time, or if you've had more jobs, that sort of thing. But you do just want to use bullet points. Remember that our admissions team is reading a lot of resumes, and so keeping it to the things that are showcasing, what you've done in each of the jobs that you've had in a bullet point is preferred. Next. The recommendations, we do use the GMAT common letter of recommendation. And so basically what you do, and you may be familiar with this already, but you will just put the name of the recommender along with their email address, and then they actually get an email that has a form on there that they'll fill out answering questions about their experience with you. So I would say with this, my tip would be to talk to the recommenders and let them know your time frame when you're applying and when they could expect the email. And then also remind them of all those great things that you did while you were working with them, because that just helps them recall those things as they're answering those questions about you and those things that you may have accomplished while you were working with them. I always find that it is interesting that when you do speak with them, they tend to give you a better recommendation as well. Next. So the official GMAT and GRE scores, again, as I did mention earlier, you can submit the unofficial scores initially and then have the official scores sent to us. The other thing is, if you have not taken the test yet, there is a portion on the actual application that says, or where you can state when you're taking the test and the date. And if you don't have that set yet, that's perfectly fine. You can go ahead and just email us and let us know when you're going to take it, and we will put a note on your file basically, and then we'll just hold your decision until we get those official scores or the unofficial scores, whatever you can provide to us, and go ahead and move your application forward. And on the screen, you will just see what our middle 80 percentile range is for both the tests, just to give you an idea. Next. So with the admissions interview, we will invite you for that interview. If we are back in person, depending on if you're applying this cycle, or maybe you're not going to apply to, maybe you're not starting till 2022 as an example. So when we can come back to campus, and if you're not applying this year, you can come to campus at any time and do your interview. But for this entire academic year, we are doing invitations, and all of our interviews will be via Zoom. They are lasting about 45 minutes to an hour. And just so you know, the interviewer does just look at your resume prior to, because we really want to hear the rest of your story from you. And so it's something that we don't want to read about ahead of time. We'd rather hear it from you first. And one thing I will let you know, and I'm sure you've been hearing this a lot through the Zoom, different Zoom talks and that sort of thing, is that do remember that we can see you. So we do expect that you dress professionally. Make sure that people aren't walking around you. We've seen a lot of different things in backgrounds, which are really interesting. But it probably isn't ideal for someone who's going through an interview. Next. So our admissions deadlines are round 1 has just passed. And so our next upcoming deadline is January the 12th. And then you'll see February 23rd and April 6th. And we do encourage our international candidates to apply by that February deadline, just so that they have ample time to go through the visa process and all of that prior to coming to campus. Next. So one thing I do get asked often is about fellowships. I'm sure most schools do. They are awarded based on merit. So for us, that means that we are taking a holistic look at your entire application. So this includes, your writing skills, what the recommenders said about you, along with how you did in the interview, your GPA and your test scores and your work experience. All of that is taken into consideration as a holistic look when we're making those decisions. And upon admittance is when our candidates will find out what their award will be. So as you can see, that is an actual portion of our application there on the bottom of the screen. Additional information where it just asks you if you would like to be considered for a fellowship. So just answer yes to that. I know we also get asked, does that hinder my application at all? If I say yes, no, absolutely not. We are happy to consider everyone for fellowships and give awards. And our fellowships do range from $10,000 to a full tuition plus stipend fellowship. Next. So thank you all for joining me today in this spotlight. And since you were able to attend, if you do plan to apply to our program, you may use the code IRISHWEB, all capital letters, all one word, as your fee waiver. And that is a screenshot of what it looks like where you'll put that fee waiver. And to all of our military candidates out there, we love our military. We typically have anywhere from like 12 to 15% military in our program, and we have an awesome vets club. So if you are in the military, please use the fee waiver military in that spot. Next. So now we're going to open it up to Q&A. Thank you so much again for joining me, and I look forward to your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. That was a fantastic presentation. And we do have some questions lined up, both from the forums and then some of the questions that we've seen posted. So I do want to go ahead and put up maybe a COVID-related one. It just says, can you share an overview of how COVID is affecting class sizes, deferrals, and anticipated applicant pool? And maybe just use this question to kind of discuss the overall COVID application process. Is there any major differences that students should be aware of?
Right. So as far as the application itself, everything has remained the same as far as requirements, that sort of thing. We even had those same requirements at the end of last cycle, and it worked out really well. And I know sometimes people will ask about the test itself, but we did find that all of our candidates were able to, for the most part, do the online test, that sort of thing too, which worked out really well. And we like to keep the test in there because, like, even last year, we did have, of course, almost 3/4 of the application cycle complete, and all of those candidates had taken it before COVID. So we really want to maintain the integrity of the application process. So that's why we did keep the test as part of that requirement. But as far as the class size itself, we do have a smaller class size anyway. So typically our 1-year program is anywhere between like 40 and 60 candidates. And then our 2-year program plus the dual degree is typically about 120 to 135. And so with the number of classrooms we have, we've been able to social distance. They wear masks. We have been on campus since August. And so it's really worked out well. There was one hiccup that we had earlier in the year where several of the undergrads actually tested positive. However, they did allow our MBA program to stay on campus. So we really only had 2 days that they went online until they sorted all of that out. And then we remained on campus while the undergrads did have to stay off for 2 weeks.
Got it. No, that's a fantastic answer. And I'll try to stay away from too many COVID questions. However, I do know it's a big worry. So another one is really discussing the recruiting events. And it says, would love to hear how recruiting events are planned and how students recruit. But I think we can use this to maybe talk about both how just the average the average recruiting cycle works, and then maybe how that's changing or has changed because of COVID, if there is.
Yes. So we would typically be on the road right now. We would have started about the middle of August with many of our travels. So Forte inside the MBA, QS, there's many different companies and things like that that we would use to be on the road. And we would be on the road about the middle of November. And so now all of those have gone online. I hope that some of you have attended some of those events. But I have found that what we see is some of those are larger because we're able to have a broader outreach. And especially with the international students, there's many of those, of course, in the US that they wouldn't be able to attend. And we would travel internationally as well. But we're hitting on more international countries right now. But what this has also had is that we set up a lot more one-on-ones. So we might meet them, I'm going to call on the road virtually, and then they reach out to us and we'll have a one-on-one conversation with them. And so it's getting to know them, I feel like, in the same way, but virtually. Of course, we definitely miss meeting everybody in person, but we're just going with the flow this year.
No, very, very good. And then additionally, I know many people are experiencing differences in their own professional working career. So I know a lot of students are probably curious if they have either a gap year, maybe from university to when they start their role, just because their job had been maybe postponed, or maybe they've run into some issues with the current times where they may have been laid off in the past 2 or 3 months. How's the best way to explain that during the application cycle?
Yes, that is a very good question. And so I guess first I would say that we understand. We're very empathetic with everything that is going on. And so don't feel like you're alone in that. And it does not hinder the decision that you would get during this time. So how I would treat that as an applicant is, for us, we do have an optional essay, and that is where you can just state, and essay is the term that we have on there. It does not have to be really long, but you could just write a paragraph stating, this is the situation, and then we just appreciate that you've addressed it, and so that we're not guessing what happened. So this can also, that optional essay can also be used if you had a lower GPA as an example. So you might have an explanation for that, or the test score, whatever it is that you would like to speak more to. That is what that optional essay is there for. Oh, I can't hear you.
Muted myself. Building off of your last response as well, in terms of maybe using the optional essay or other areas, what about reapplicants who are trying to show that maybe they've developed over time? What is the best way to kind of showcase maybe those strengths, or maybe they're just trying to rethink of how they did their essays in the first place? What advice would you give reapplicants?
Yes, so we actually offer one-on-ones with those candidates. So if you are reapplying to our program, you can certainly contact us and we can go through your application and just talk about where you could strengthen your application. And of course, this could be done in many different ways. I always remind people, obviously, like the GPA, you cannot change. It's the same. But if you've taken on additional leadership roles, you've been promoted, if you've retaken a test, if you've had even experience with like a nonprofit as an example. So maybe you've been working with an outside group or a professional group where you've been able to take on leadership or have different team experiences, those sort of things. Don't leave those things out. Those are all important. It's not just about your actual paying job, but also those outside activities as well.
Fantastic. And then I do see a question from Benjamin in the chat, and he's wondering if at the moment he sends his application, he doesn't have his GMAT score. Is it possible to send it later? What is the Mendoza School's mindset on that?
Absolutely. Yes, you may definitely send it later. And so on the application, there is a spot. If you know the date, you can fill the date in on the application to let us know when you're going to take it. However, if you aren't quite sure, you need some more time to study, that's awesome. Go ahead and take your time. We never want anybody to feel rushed into taking the test before they're prepared. So then you can just send us an email as to when you are going to take it once you have that planned out. And then we will mark your file as to that date. And so just so we know what to expect to score, basically. So we would just hold your decision until we would receive that test score, if that's the final part to make you complete.
Okay, very good. And I do also see a couple different questions regarding the English language test slash TOEFL test. I see right here, are there any waivers for international students? And then I also see another question that says, is it mandatory to submit that if a person's bachelor degree is at an English institution?
Yes, great question. And so, yes, we do have the waiver option. It is part of the application. So if you have been taught in English, you just have to show that. A lot of times there is something from the school that you were taught at that will state that you were taught in English. So we would just need something like that. Or if you now live in the U.S., some international students are working in the U.S., you can also send us that information. So we work through or work one-on-one with you as far as that goes as well. But yes, we do offer those waivers.
Fantastic. Another question too, I see from Kartik, I believe, basically saying that he believes everyone that applies to Mendoza is of course going to be a meritorious, a very high potential candidate. So is that a challenge to who you select for fellowships? And then is there any potential for a need-based fellowship? I'm sure there are also need-based scholarships, so maybe an opportunity to talk about some of the funding options that some might be able to explore.
Yes, so we are just so fortunate at Mendoza to have very giving and gracious alumni that have provided a lot of fellowships for our program. So this past year, I believe it was close to 89% of the admitted students did receive some sort of a fellowship. So, so there's, we even get asked, so if I apply later as opposed to round one or round two, will that mean that I could get less fellowships? And no, actually it's not. We typically will have funding to the end of the cycle due to the graciousness of our alumni. So that's one thing I really didn't even touch on, is that our alumni network is very broad. We have about 220 clubs in the US and 50 outside the US. So I always say we have friends all over the world, because if you're coming from somewhere else or you want to work somewhere else after, or just find activities to do while you're traveling, you can always reach out to someone from the alumni club in the area you're going to be in. And one thing you will find is that if you say you're from Notre Dame, or you're a current student at Notre Dame, or staff at Notre Dame, whatever the case is, Notre Dame, people are very supportive of one another, and it's like your instant friends. It's a community that you will have for the rest of your life. And so I think that's just such a huge benefit that we also have to offer for our program.
That's fantastic. Hopping back maybe on the admissions cycle, there's a question asking how, and I'd like to kind of take a different spin on this, but it asks how applicants who don't have adequate leadership experience can get a shot at admission. But I think this might be a good opportunity to talk about maybe just unique profiles in general. I know the MBA application kind of incentivizes being unique and crafting your own story. So maybe someone who's not a traditional leader, how do they showcase their worth, if you will?
Yes. So I know sometimes people mainly think of leadership as you're like with your title as an example, you're leading the team, but there's so many different ways that you can showcase being a leader when you've stepped up. So if you have had any opportunities where you've been able to step up or suggest something or sell an idea, anything like that is showcasing how you've been a leader. As I mentioned earlier, if you work with any outside group, so nonprofit or professional organization, or maybe you're working with your church or a little league, anything like that, you can showcase it that way also. But if you don't have those opportunities, even we do ask a series of questions even in the interview just to get some perspective from the candidate. So it's really even just understanding, the type of leader you may want to emulate, those sorts of things. And so, that I guess that would just be something for you to consider and think about is if you haven't had that, what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of characteristics do you want to look at as you're developing your leadership? And really, that's why you're getting your MBA, right? I mean, we don't expect everybody to be that leader already because we feel like that's going to be our job actually is to kind of take you into that next level and really show you the way and give you those things to think about ahead of time.
No, that's a fantastic answer. And to kind of even build on that while we're talking about pieces of the application that students may not think they have, another one revolves around extracurriculars. And I know this is a big concern for a lot of people who just don't feel like they have any. So, I'm curious to hear what some of the extracurriculars you've seen that may be a bit different than most would expect, and maybe some ways that prospective students can start looking for these extracurriculars to boost their application.
Sure. So it could be anywhere from tutoring or coaching or being on a board. It could be Toastmasters. I know we have some candidates that are on Toastmasters, but it could even be sports. So let's say you're on an adult sports league, or maybe you did intramural sports in college and you were a captain, or maybe you led, some kind of a tournament, or, there's just so many different ways. There could be fundraising efforts. Even if you're, like I mentioned, tutoring, sometimes I know there's some candidates that might just stay with one student for the whole year and they, help mentor them and tutor them and all of that kind of combined. So I would say just look for those kinds of opportunities. And really, I would say especially, well, in the US, I'm not sure how it is in other countries at this time, but I know that there's so many schools that are, they don't have that right now, like they normally would have aides and those kinds of people that are helping out in classrooms. So that could be an opportunity, maybe reach out to a school and see if there's something they would need assistance with. So really it's, whatever you can see, I would say do something in your interest, like something that really interests you, something that you're going to have fun with and really feel passionate about. Those are the kinds of things that I would look into. It could be music, if you have like a civic theater as an example, like we have one here near the campus in Notre Dame. And so if you enjoy acting or singing or anything like that, just getting involved in things is really what we want to see. But I really think it's important that don't feel forced into it, really be passionate about it, make it enjoyable for you.
Sure. No, that's an important thing that I feel like gets missed a lot, as everyone wants to show exactly what the school wants and is not painting their own story and then
exactly
communicate who they are. So no, that's a fantastic point.
Yep.
Another one that may be a bit of a clerical issue that I've seen get tossed around the forums. If someone's recommender is not able to access their official email, or I guess the email of where their job title is, I'm guessing, and they need to submit it with their personal ID, will it impact their application, or what is the way to mediate that?
Yes. So if that is something that needs to be done, I would just say put that in the optional essay, just stating like if there's for some reason that they can't accept them at their work emails as an example. And it just has to be a quick explanation. So that's how I would handle that situation.
Okay, fantastic. And as we continue the story of painting who you are as a candidate, I know probably the biggest fear that most people have is what happens if I don't have the proper GPA? What does that completely ruin my chances? And will a high GMAT help offset this? And what is the best way to paint a good picture without maybe overcompensating and making it a central theme of your application?
Yes. So I will go back to the optional essay. I would definitely address it. And I think that's really part of the key of all of this is just addressing that you are acknowledging that maybe your GPA isn't ideal. And if you had something going on in your life, if you were immature, I mean, there's so many different reasons why that is, and that's perfectly fine. We don't say, oh, they had this specific GPA and then you're done. No, we did, definitely take a lot of other things. And yes, the higher GMAT can definitely help your case, I will say, because what we really are looking at are people that can be successful in the program. And so if you're showing that you do have those skills through the GMAT, then that can definitely help. We do have a higher quant skill that's needed in the MBA program. And so that's really important. Like, we wouldn't want to admit somebody that we didn't think could do the work. So yes, that is definitely one way. We've also had some people that have done like MBA math as an example on their own, or maybe taken an online course, or, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. But the GMAT, I would say, is definitely one way. And again, that's because it's more apples to apples than comparing you to other applicants.
Sure, and that makes perfect sense. And then I assume if someone does complete a course like MBA Math or even HBX Core, that there's somewhere on the application that they could put those transcripts. And then a caveat to that is if they're taking the class during the submission date, are they able to submit that they're taking it, and then we'll provide transcripts later?
Yes, that is perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect. And then additionally, here's kind of a broad stroke of the question, and I think you've answered it in a couple different questions, but maybe centralize here and say what aspects do you look in a candidate that help you decide if a candidate is unfit or fit for the school, but maybe what helps someone stand out in an industry where a lot of the people coming in may come from the same backgrounds. If you do come from that pool of similar candidates, how can you really show that you stand out and really adhere to what Mendoza is looking for in potential students?
Yeah, so I would definitely say, of course, look to see what the different things are that we stand for. So ethics and values and giving back to the community, those kinds of things. And so if you've had those experiences, those are definitely things that can help you stand out as a candidate. And again, I want you to be passionate about it. I don't want you to, try to write a story that's not really yours. So really, I mean, it's really that simple. We really just want to hear your story. I know candidates are often thinking, should I have a consultant write an essay or anything like that? And I would say absolutely not. Write it in your words and really just tell us your story. And we don't have it's not a cookie cutter process, so to speak. Like, we want a diverse group in the class. And so every story is important. Every story is something that we enjoy hearing about. And so there's really no magic recipe, I'll say, for that. So, and in the interview is going to be another great part of that too. So you really get to showcase your story through the interview as well.
And that's fantastic feedback, and that's something that I've seen that I would implore everybody watching this right now. I mean, going through these essays when you're going through the application is a great time to self-reflect as well. I found myself learning about me more during the application cycle than I had in my past, 26 years of life. So,
yes.
so definitely do that and have friends read your essays, see if it really speaks like you. If they can't tell that you're the one writing it without you telling them, then you're probably doing something not fantastic.
That's right. That's right. And that you brought up a great point, as far as self-reflection. Don't ever feel like the MBA has to be the next step. Again, it should be something that you're really passionate about, and you should be able to tell why. And so, as Brendan just mentioned, self-reflection is so important during this process. And again, as I mentioned earlier, like just being honest with yourself, like not feeling like, oh gosh, I have to be a finance person because that's what all my friends are doing or whatever. Like, what are you going to be passionate about doing? What is something then that's going to make you happy in your life? Because as you know, you're going to have many years left to work. So it's really something that you're going to want to enjoy. And so reaching out, networking with people that are in different areas of business and not just at one company, because there's, the same title of person at one company and at another company, but their roles may be completely different, or their culture at that company might be completely different. So as many people as you can reach out to talk to so that you can really say, you know what, I would love to do that, or I would not want to do that. And I think that's just as important as knowing what you don't want to do as it is to what it is that you do want to do.
That's a fantastic point, and not something that I see a ton of people do, is really understand, is an MBA actually right for me?
Right.
And so it's a mutual agreement almost between the university and yourself, and that's a fantastic point. It looks like we have time for one or two more questions, and I see some application specific ones, so I do want to make sure we get those answered as people are completing their applications. This person asked that he's run his own venture and never really had bosses, and because of that, doesn't regularly deal with suppliers or customers. What sort of letters of recommendation would be right for him and would be right for Mendoza?
Yes. So you could, in that instance, use a client as an example. Maybe there's a vendor that you work with often, more closely than others, or you could also use, if there's a professional organization or a nonprofit or something like that you've worked with for a while, maybe on a project or something like that, you could also use someone like that.
Fantastic. And then I guess one more a specific question on age brackets. Basically asking, and actually that's a Ross question, but we'll the name itself. They may have not realized what YouTube, but what age bracket is there an age bracket where you maybe cut off from an MBA? I know there's an average age and generally an upper and lower bound. Is there an age when you should start looking maybe at other options than a full-time MBA where that may not provide you the best ROI for your time?
Sure. So it really depends on your work experience as well, because it could be that you would fall into an executive MBA program. But I would definitely say, if I saw the age right there, like 39, 40, that's not too old. We have candidates from that age group almost every year. Thinking about even like some of our military folks that have been in the military, 10 years or whatever, and now they're leaving and going back into the workforce. So you wouldn't really be alone as far if it's that age group. But also I would take a look, are you at the point where maybe you are already in an executive type role, but you just want that MBA in order to, again, move up, that sort of thing. And I would say even if you're a little bit older than what you are, that would be another option. But we do even have people that are kind of on that bubble that can still do the full-time MBA program. It's really what's going to work best in your lifestyle. With a full-time MBA program, it's a great time to really reflect just on yourself and focus on your growth, where you're leaving your work, of course. But if the executive MBA program is something that you think would work better in your lifestyle, then I would take a look at that as well.
Fantastic. And as a last question, I know I kind of know the answer to this one, but I'd love for you to explain in your own words,
Sure.
Because Notre Dame itself is a prestigious school, and so many people are nervous that what if they didn't graduate from a prestigious school in their undergrad? Does that kind of automatically give them a ding mark because they didn't graduate top of their class at Harvard or Yale? And how do you describe that in the application cycle?
Yes. So no, it does not matter. As long as you graduated from accredited school is really what we're looking for. And again, that's just one piece of the puzzle too. And everybody has their own backstory. And so, you had that education, but then what did you do with it? That's, almost more important to us is what did you do with that afterward? And, how you're going to do on the GMAT, all of that's going to take into place. But there's not any schools that we're like, we would absolutely not take anybody from that school. That does not exist for us. And so you would be fine.
Awesome. Fantastic. And it looks like we are coming up on time here. I'll go ahead and throw up here to make sure that everyone here enters for the prize drawing. But thank you, Debbie. You've done a fantastic job describing really Notre Dame and everything it brings to the table. But I'd love to give you a chance if there's any kind of closing points you want to make or send out to the group before we sign off.
Yeah, I would just say congratulations to you if you're thinking about the MBA and that it's going to really help you in the future if that's your path. And it is a big decision. And so, as I was mentioning, just, taking that deep dive into yourself. I know even like sometimes with the finances, people that, that can be scary, right? And we completely understand that. But if you take a look at the fellowships that could be offered, if you're a 2-year candidate, most of our students will have an MBA paid internship between the 2 years, which is really helpful for that second year. The ROI of the program is really high. And so taking all of those things into consideration, at the end of the day, I think you're in a much better place if that's, again, if you're following your passion. And so don't let those things scare you. There's been millions of people in your positions in the past that have made it through and have seen the growth in themselves. And it's just an amazing process to go through. So I just want to say congratulations to all of you for thinking of this as an opportunity for yourself. And if there's any questions you have specific about Notre Dame, please feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. And yes, please. I mean, if you can't tell from this chat, Debbie is more than a friendly face to ask a good question to. Please reach out. And once again, thank you to everyone who tuned in. There were some fantastic questions, and I think we rely on y'all to really ask those questions so we can get some of those issues out there because there are people who may be a little scared to ask those questions. So thank you to everyone here, and thank you, Debbie. And we're going to go ahead and sign off now.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.